Today I'm in Las Cruces, New Mexico, visiting my mom.
This is Skipper's apartment right here. I think he's picked up golf balls when he's been out on his walks.
A lot of family, a lot of watch and clock history comes from heirlooms. So my mom gave me this Rolex that was my dad's. It's a 1952 6085, 6085 Oyster Perpetual without a date. This one is silver and gold, and it's in amazing condition. But the story was my dad got it when he was in his 20s in the military, and when he married her, he gave it to her after he married her and they had their first child, my sister. He gave it to her in 1962, and he bought himself 1503, I think it is. Anyway, Oyster Perpetual Datejust, stainless steel. And so they both had these Rolexes, but the interesting thing about the 1952 is that it has radium lume and in the hands, and my mom never changed that. So it has the original dial and hands, and the radium still works, which is rare. Like I've purchased dozens of, not dozens, but probably a dozen radium watches, and the vast majority of them, the radium no longer glows. But on the Rolex, it still glows, and that's cool because it's somehow the way that the radium works is the radium actually activates something else which is luminous. The radium is just providing the energy. And so for it to last for 60 years or 100 years, you have to have the right combination of varnish and the luminous material and the radium. The radium is going to last regardless because it has a half-life of 1,600 years, so it's going to keep giving off energy. But for that energy to turn into something that's visible, you also have to have a stable complementary compounds that actually provide the luminous aspects of it. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is I brought this watch along with me, which is my Junghans Mega 1000. And this is, the reason I brought it is because this is a digital LCD watch from the early 2000s or late 1990s. I can't remember. I'll put it in an overlay. But I think this one's from 2006, but I think it was designed in the 1990s for some reason. But this is a watch that has the radio receivers for the whole world, at least the populated part of the world. And the receiver for this one is in my hometown of Boulder, Colorado. And it's cool because it tells you WWVB. It tells you what radio it's getting the time sync from. And this is WWVB, which stands for Boulder. So the antenna is actually in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is a little bit further from the mountains than Boulder, which gives it the ability to broadcast to the entire United States, including the West Coast. By being further away from the mountains, the antenna can travel. I think it's like shortwave, but anyway, it can travel around the curvature of the Earth and reach both coasts. So I thought that was cool. And then the other thing is I grew up in Boulder, and one of my first jobs was mowing lawns at the National Bureau of Standards, where that atomic clock is located, the clock that feeds this radio signal. And in the summers, I would work there mowing lawns. That's how I saved up money to buy my first car. And that facility is still there. It's called the National Institute of Science and Technology, or NIST. And it still has the cesium clock that is the source for the time on this transmitter. And my father is buried just adjacent to that. My father passed away when I was 12 years old, and he's in a graveyard that's just adjacent to that facility. And he was already buried there when I was working there, and my job was mowing the lawns on this huge facility, and I could see the graveyard from that facility because they touched each other. But So there's another thing about family and these timepieces and history. I love all this too, like the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the Bureau standards. Those were like, there was so much science going on there back when I was there. I presume there still is. And that was a huge part of everything going on in Boulder at that time was a big part of me kind of with my aptitudes being interested in science and technology and computers. And so all that feels really good to me, like those associations. And then the other thing is I was born in Norway, and my mom has a clock that my mom and dad bought in Norway when they were there when I was born. And it's a Gustav Becker wall clock with pendulums, and it chimes every hour and every half hour. And since they bought that when I was born, it was already an antique. And I think from looking at this one, it's probably around 120 years old. It's been working continuously throughout my life. My mother has always had it in her house, and when my father was still alive, in their house. And my father used to tinker with it to make sure it was running. And he used to take care of winding it, setting the weights. You crank it and the weights go up, and then as the weights pull down, that's where it gets its energy, as opposed to like a mainspring, like a watch. But the point is, my father used to tinker with it. And when my father died, my mother had taken him to the hospital that morning, and he died. And she said that when he died, she felt his spirit leave. Like he was in a hospital room with doctors, and she was in the hall, but she said she felt his spirit leave, and then she went home, and that clock had stopped at his time of death, according to the death certificate. So the other weird thing about that is that my mom is now 87 years old, and I've been here visiting her and seeing how her life is. In this care home that she's in Las Cruces, and it's a wonderful place, and she has wonderful friends there, so all that's good. But her second husband passed away a year ago, so she's been alone for a year, just with her friends in the place. But she's having a hard time getting up in the morning. So the other morning, and since I came, that clock was not chiming. So one day I took a look at the clock, and it was not chiming. So I started fiddling with it the way my dad used to, trying to figure out, just kind of reaching in there, trying to figure out what was wrong and how to fix it. And I've since fixed it. But the first day I looked at it, I made things worse. So when I came in the morning and she was having a hard time getting up, I looked, and that clock had stopped at 2:30 in the morning. And then as she was lying in bed, and I was like, it's okay, take it easy, you can get up later, just rest. And then I went in to fiddle with the clock, and I had this anxiety about, like, I've got to get this clock working because it's tied to my mom's heart. Like, obviously not really, but because of that story about my dad and how long that clock has been with us. And then I was reminded of my dad's tinkering, and then here I was tinkering with it and trying to get it all working, and I got it going again. And so that is also like it's such a like circle of life kind of family moment. I really like that. And thing is, yeah, it's crazy, like all these associations, and that's it, I think. Just wanted to share that little personal story. But I think that's all of us have probably different personal stories about how we became attached to these pieces of jewelry, with heirlooms, clocks, watches. If you're lucky, you have a story like this of your own to attach to important timepieces in your own family and life. I certainly find it interesting, my own relationships to them. All right, thanks for watching.
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer true. I'm half crazy over the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage, I can't afford a carriage, but you'll look sweet upon the seat of a bicycle built for two.
Yay.
Yay!